Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live chat. From the last video, shout out to Cleo, Indiana and Ellen Berg once again for their presence in the chat and their comments. I appreciate that, as well as other people that watched. Today we are doing a serious video focusing in on the Dylan Rounds case and looking at Justin Rounds. More about that in a second. Now, if you didn't watch my previous video, you wanted to hear like a brief discussion about the farmland, a comparison of Lucin to Hazleton, a place where Dylan supposedly visited in the past, which is also known for farming and is more rich and developed. You want to see that? Feel free to check my previous video out, link down below in the comment section pinned again. Now, also appreciate, I think, small wave of new people coming over in recent time. I think that's from Jim Terry TV or maybe Mr. X, whatever. That's good. I think most people are on good behaviour. And yeah, I'm currently wearing a new top. I've got a new colour. Hopefully I don't look like a gay sailor. That'd be unfortunate. But yeah, I've not had this colour before. It's quite bright, isn't it? You see the arm. But yeah, it's a bit cold. So today, main aim is an updated body language analysis of Justin Rounds, comparing previous interview videos with the latest one, and that was with Heavy D. There was a change in behaviour and body language. That's why we need to focus in on it. With recent discussions as well about the grain shed and possible activity occurring in there, such as the hole in the ground, the showdown between maybe Dylan and most likely Jim Brenner. Is there an uneasy feeling? Is there some kind of psychological effect which might have impacted certain people present? Well, salty pancakes, although he's only been there like once or twice to the grain shed, he himself said it feels very eerie when you're in that area. Candice Cooley said the same thing when returning back. It's a weird feeling. But what about Justin Rounds? Well, before we get further into that, I also want to mention another important bit of news, okay? Two pieces, actually. So, if you're not already aware, I believe it's later on tonight. UK time would be early hours of the morning, I think. Just take in mind US time zone difference, you can check it yourself. But supposedly there is going to be an update by Candice Cooley. Maybe this was the update that they were talking about on the Facebook page. You know, the analysing of the photos with the drone, getting through all of that. Now they might have come to something. An agreement, new leads, evidence, or a dead end, who knows? But Candice Cooley is going to do one of those live interviews on No Thanks channel once again. And that's going to be occurring, I believe, later on tonight, early hours of tomorrow morning, UK time. You can correct me if I'm wrong. You can, also check yourself, obviously, but I just wanted to give a brief heads up. Who knows what or how it could go. I mean, this happened before with previous interviews and the videos themselves have lasted for like 2 hours, maybe a bit longer. So it could be one of those again. Might have the odd questions thrown in too. I guess we'll just see how things go. Leave your thoughts and responses down below. Are you interested in it? Are you interested in what Candice Cooley has to say about the recent update and I guess the recent search assisted with Equisearch? It'd be good to know, see what happens. See if there's any talk about Justin, any comments on him. Maybe people might reach out with their own questions, asking Candice, what's the whole deal with Justin calling out Don Haley's gay son or having a bit of an outburst? What about that photo taken at night in the grain shed? What was the whole purpose of that? Those type of questions might come about. It would be of use and see what she has to say. If I had to give my opinion, my predictions, how do I think it will go? I can imagine Whether it's good news or bad news, the end message will remain hopeful that they're still continuing, they're not stopping. That's all I can think of, right? We have been on a bit of a cliffhanger recently, as said, but we'll just see how things go. Now, we don't just end there, because the other important thing is there is another interview occurring, and it's with another key individual. And I don't think it's been done ever before, at least on YouTube. Maybe even by the police either. Supposedly Jim Terry TV. I don't know if it's Jim Terry TV2 or his original main channel. I think it's his main channel. Going to be interviewing Chase Venstra. That's what I saw visually. And I think that's coming out on November the 9th. Now, I don't know what date it is today. Bear in mind, I don't know if the scheduled dates and times are back to front when it comes to other people's channels. Can anyone tell me? Like, when it comes to certain websites and there is a video game, a beta testing, the launch date of a film, a game, whatever it may be, if it's to do with America, they have the bloody date back to front, so it gets confusing as fuck at times. I don't know if it applies on YouTube. Like, when I say it's occurring at 9:30, that's how it should appear. That's how it appears on my screen, 21:30. I don't know if it appears on other people's screen as 21:30 as well. No, I mean the actual date. What am I doing? Not the time, the actual date. So if I upload it today, and then you have the month, and then the year, is it back to front or not for people in America because of their location? I don't know if it auto-adjust. Whatever. But yeah, Jim Terry doing an interview with Chase Venstra. Well, they're not exactly back to back, you know, there's a space between them, but, you know, these interviews can help. And in recent time, because I started looking at them, because in the past, like with the Duty Ron interview, the Zav Girl interview with Candice Cooley, I didn't bother watching them at the time because I was focusing on my own stuff and videos and coverage. And the videos were way too long, 5 hours long. Fuck me, I don't have that time, don't have that, you know, I've got my own videos to do, can't do everything all at once. So it was impractical. But with these recent interviews, whether it be the Mob Crew, which he's done well, Chris, or No Thanks Doug, the length of them, or even the East Idaho News Channel, I look at all of those and they are helpful. You know, there's a lot of points talked about and questions asked and other foreshadowing things. I try and note them down, okay? Take this in mind for a possible future video, either one or two. It depends. I don't know what Jim Terry could be like. Well, I don't use people's footage when it comes to this stuff. I just simply make bullet points of key points mentioned throughout the video. So a two hour video interview might come a 1 hour, 30-minute video looking at specific points and questioning them, analysing them, right? That's the format I do. So I'll probably do that with the Candice Cooley one coming up very shortly, see how that goes. And then I'll probably do the same with the Jim Terry one, if it's clear to understand, obviously. And we'll just see how things go from there, right? And yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure Chase Venstra has not done a single interview with anyone on YouTube before. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I see it and think. So yeah, there are some things coming up, so make sure to be on the lookout for. And yeah, we'll see how things go. Now, let's return back to today's video and what it's all about, the importance of it. Body language of Justin Rounds. There has been a change over time. We've seen him in the past. He's appeared maybe reserved, calm, kind of well, I don't know about soft voice, but, you know, he seemed stable. And at times there's been the odd outburst. We don't need to focus on that specifically because we've already covered it, but what we will do is look at the heavy D footage. I think the best appropriate order to do it in is in the correct order. And in the live chat, you can share your thoughts, opinions, reactions, and own thoughts as we go along in this, whether you agree or not, we'll see, okay? So I think what we'll do, I don't think there's too many interviews to look at, right, when it involves Justin. I'll probably play 1 to 2 videos from the East Idaho News channel. Take in mind, I think they've done at least 3 to 4 different interviews on East Idaho News. I'll probably play 2 lots of footage from 2 of the different interviews. If I notice a big change, I'll include all 4 clips of the 4 different interviews, but if they're very similar, then I don't really need to. I think the best contrast or the best comparison would be we start off with the first clip, which was the very first interview of Justin Rounds, if I'm correct in saying, when it comes to the East Idaho News channel, okay? Was Justin Rounds present during the very first Heavy D video? I don't think so. No, he wasn't. Apologies for cutting off there, but yeah. With the very first Heavy D video, way back at the start, one of the first people to, I guess, interview Candice Cooley, if I'm correct in saying. Candice Cooley was present, and so was her new husband, but Justin wasn't present then. He only appeared in the second one with Heavy D, which was months later. Okay, so that clears that one up. So yeah, what we'll do, we'll first move on to the very first interview of Justin Rounds on the first East Idaho News channel. Play a small portion of it, more to do with him talking and how he, appears. You can visualize it yourself. And then I'll follow it up right after with the latest East Idaho News channel interview with Justin and Candice, same format. Then compare the two, talk about, and then move on to the Heavy D footage, and then refer back from there. And I might even just do like a side-by-side comparison. I don't know about a side-by-side video play, because that doesn't quite work with the hardware, but I can just do like a still photo and just describe it, so I'm going back and forth so you know who I'm talking about, okay? So I've literally just fucking assessed how I'm going to plan this video out whilst also recording it, so that's a bit weird. Right, put that aside. Let's move on to the first piece of footage of Justin Rounds and his body language.
It's terrible. It's terrifying, but it's also got us the help we need.
Yeah, finally. The FBI's got involved. It feels like something's gonna happen now. With Box Elder, it didn't feel like anything was happening. I don't know what they were doing, but yeah. That's why we discussed about getting into the media.
Yeah,
and letting people know who Dylan was, because that's why we got into the media, and to get the FBI involved and to let people know who he was, and that he wasn't the kid that just took off for a week to do dumb stuff. We kind of gotta keep some of what we think to ourselves. We gotta keep some of this, because we know a little bit more about some of the stuff than we can't release everything. My main goal is to just find out who did what and make sure they get what they got coming to them with the law, or whatever.
Right, so that was the very first East Idaho News channel interview of Justin Rounds and Candice Cooley. Now, let's move on over to the latest and last known interview by East Idaho News of Justin Rounds and Candice Cooley, and then compare and contrast once we return.
What James Brenner's telling you, or trying to point a finger to Chase.
Mm-hmm. And trying to tell us to search the road that goes into Clinton, Utah, and take four-wheeler. He wanted us to take a four-wheeler and time it. But what he doesn't know, I guess, is that Chase Venstra at 7 in the morning, I believe, was on camera at the Flying J in Snowville, Utah at 7 a.m. of that Saturday morning.
The day Dylan
The
disappeared.
day Dylan disappeared, the day Dylan was, that morning when he'd called
Yeah.
my mom at what time?
6:51.
6:51. So Chase was in Snowville at 7:30
Yeah.
or something.
On
So
records.
Jim was just leaning me towards him. He wanted to talk to me and Dawn and talk about a place that Dylan had hid some stuff on Dylan's property, which I have no idea where that would be. It's a flat piece of ground.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine where. And when we were out there with the Diesel Brothers, I drove all around again.
Yeah.
Because we second guess ourselves. I do
Yeah.
all
We
the
both.
time.
Yeah. Constantly going through the same things.
We checked the grain truck. I don't know how many times at the very beginning. I still wondered if I'd checked it enough. But so he was leaning towards Chase, and I wasn't sure whether what I was supposed to tell him, or if I should try to act like I was on his side, or if I was supposed to call him out. Well, he kept calling, and he talked to my mom, and my mom called him out on some of those things, and Brenner called Brenner out on some of the things that I just said. And he said, well, I can't talk to you anymore. You're going to have to talk to my lawyer. So my mom called him out.
So there you go. First ever interview and the last known one by East Idaho News. Now, bit cut and shoot. Shit, that's the username of someone on Salty Pancakes channel. How do I word it? A bit abrupt, okay? There's clips, right? I was just using them as rough examples. As for body language and his overall behaviour, focusing specifically on Justin. You might wonder why at the start it focused in on Candice. 2 reasons. I'll explain them now before I forget because of my memory. I just wanted to demonstrate that she has shown some emotion at a point in time, okay? There have been talks in the past where people have said she's cold, she doesn't react, seems a bit odd. In recent time, Candice Cooley said herself she's holding it together, keeping it within, to be able to keep on going in the mystery case and try and push on. That early clip, what you saw, showed a different side to her. But a more important reason to why I wanted to share that with you, that clip, is Justin Round's body language and behaviour at the time of her getting upset. He remained almost stone-faced. He didn't comfort or reach out or do anything. He was like that. So I guess it alternates between emotions at times. Then she was upset. He was a bit more relaxed maybe, or felt a little bit numb at the time. Fast forward to now, Candice Cooley, hard-faced, a bit negative at times when complaining about people and groups for certain reasons, obviously. Whereas Justin now is a little bit more vocal and verbal at times with those outbursts. So you can see how things have switched and changed. Is it random? Not really. I guess it's just like the time, what's going on at that point, if there's any factors going on. Okay. So the actual information talked about in those clips, arguably important, but we have talked about them before. I have covered it in a previous video, specifically to do with that interview at the time, talking it through, analysing each point, adding my own thoughts and opinions, okay? So if you want to check something out like that, go back on my channel afterwards and you'll be able to find it further down on the list, okay? What we're primarily doing is looking at his behaviour, his body language, facial expressions and all of that, just to see how does he appear, you know? And I think what I can say is from looking at both the first interview and the latest one, there are similarities for these clips, okay? It will be different when we look at Heavy D, but we'll do that a bit later, okay? In terms of similarities, where do you want to start? Well, I'll give my thoughts. You can share your thoughts in the live chat as I go along, okay? Okay. Eye contact. So Justin Round's eye contact is pretty neutral. It's not fixed, nor is it looking away in fear. He's maintaining decent eye contact for certain periods of time, whether it be looking at Candice, if he requires an answer or listening to her, or he looks directly at Ned Eaton, the interviewer from East Idaho News, when answering a question, responding back. That's pretty normal, right? Not much else going on there. Is it different to Candice Cooley? Kinda. Candice Cooley, when we previously looked at her, she was looking a bit all over the place, right? Like this, like that, looking down. But Justin seems a bit more stable, a bit more focused, right, in his eyes. They don't seem abrupt, not all over the place. It's level, somewhat balanced. I mean, if you were not looking at someone at all, then it could be suspicious or you could be shy and nervous. If you are directly looking and you're not, you're just constantly staring, then that could be seen as challenging someone. But in this case, with the two clips I presented to you, I would say a normal level of eye contact, right? Nothing out of the ordinary. Now, what about tone of voice? I mean, he's got a bit of a deep voice. He's a male, and he's just got a deep voice. Not much to it. But the tone, is it a smooth, calming voice? Maybe that's what you think. It sounds like he's talking normal, right? Like how he normally would do, I guess, in a semi-formal situation. There is like a moment where his tone of voice went slightly higher pitched when he either was correcting himself or reinstating the true importance, where he was like, but the main thing is to be finding Dylan rounds, of course. That raising of one's voice, the tone of it, that's just to, whether it be to cut back into the conversation because he's got a second point to mention, or he's kind of like using that voice to display just a little form of authority and stamping it in importance of finding Dylan is what matters. Now, what I will cut in with on the spot, right? I know there was some questioning with Candice Cooley. People were saying Candice Cooley, in her interviews, she wasn't wording certain things or saying the right stuff at times. What would be an example? Yeah, that's it. Some viewers said that Candice Cooley wasn't questioning where is Dylan at. It was all about who's done it, who's responsible, where are they at, where's the evidence, where's the items, what has been recovered. Oh, the LE have done this, the LE have done that. Oh, YouTubers are doing this, YouTubers are doing that, Lance is doing that wrong. That should have been looked at, that's been delayed, but not where is Dylan at. The main aim is finding Dylan. I think it was worded like that by viewers. Let me know if you agree with that point. With Justin Rounds, you clearly heard him. As he stated, it's important to find Dylan. That's a normal line you would expect to hear from a parent, right? So that ties in line. Also, the bit where he said about it's important finding the people that did it, responsible for Dylan's disappearance, and, making sure that they pay via the law. You see, adding in additional words, because if he left it as to make sure that they get what's coming to them, if he left it like that, that could have been interpreted as, oh, is he, doing some kind of threat, saying that I'll step in and make sure that they pay. But he didn't do that. He made sure to add in law presence, police presence to apprehend these guys for a conviction. That's what he was referring to. So he's being, in a way, careful with wording, right? I know there's a contrast compared to recent time. We can't dismiss that, but you can kind of see some kind of thought processing going on in his head, which is good, right? Compared to Candice Cooley, big contrast. Candice Cooley, switching and changing of information. 1 minute it's this, then it's that. 1 minute it's this way, but then no, it's in the other order. What? That's what I mean. Doesn't seem to be the case with Justin, right? What do we move on to next? I would say, in terms of actual physical body language, Justin Rounds appears to have, I guess you could call it a leg twitch, or he keeps moving his leg about. So he's sat like this, and it's his left leg. It's his left leg. At one point, it was kind of crossed over, and he kept flicking his foot. I mean, nothing out of the ordinary. People do that, even when they're just sat down. Might be because it's resting on a nerve, or it's just a habit. Just like how some people might click their heels together when they're standing still because they can't keep still. Maybe. Just like how I can't stop drinking bloody water because my mouth keeps getting dry. But yeah, just a slight twitch in his leg. Either that's just a habit, normal, or a little bit of nerves, right? You've seen it where if people's hands are shaking a bit, not too much, not like withdrawal from alcohol, but, you know, slight shakes of the hand. You could be nervous or trembling of your voice. It's all normal, right? If a person was nervous, why though? Is it because they are guilty and they're trying to hide something, trying not reveal themselves? Or are they just nervous because the setting they're in, the situation, the event? That's most likely with Justin because of what's actually happening. Having to do an interview and talk, possibly. So that's really the only form of movement I really saw within Justin, his leg shaking at times. In comparison to Candice Cooley, when we looked previously, was on some videos it was kind of like moving around a little bit. Not too extreme, but there was a bit more movement involved. So I just wanted to mention that. Do you interpret it differently with Justin's posture, body language? Let me know. Next key point, and it's an important one, this. Kind of ties back to eye contact. You know when I said that Justin at times looked towards Candice, whether it be listening or more importantly, adding on a point. And the reason why is because in some situations, Justin doesn't have all of the answers or information when it comes to retelling a certain story, answering a question. He looks to Candice Cooley because he feels that she does know more than him, or he might feel like she knows something that he doesn't know. That's why he looks and he says, "What date was it?" "Oh yeah, Tuesday." "Yeah, okay." Just a very subtle bit of body language that, but what it shows is Justin acknowledges that other people are also knowledgeable on the case, right? Takes time when he's talking, looks to others for possible answers. In contrast to Candice Cooley, when Candice is talking, it's mainly her running the show. Yap, yap, yap. From what other people have said, Candice Cooley outspeaking people, over-talking others, not letting other people talk, which could be somewhat problematic, right? It could be interpreted as she's like that because she knows more or supposedly knows more, but it leads to a limitation, a slight consequence, more room for mistakes. You know, the more talking, the longer they talk, the higher the chance that they could slip up at a point in time, and that's exactly what's happened multiple times. I don't need to go into depth. My previous videos clearly explain, as most of you already know, okay? As for Justin Rounds, you've not really heard me quote him too much. Really, probably the only time was when it came to the whole Brenner trying to talk to Justin Rounds. That was really it, okay? and a bit about Chase Venstra, and also a bit about Don Hately and Jim Brenner visiting Justin's place when taking the truck down and overhearing a conversation. That's really the only time I've referred to Justin Rounds and quoted him in a way. So, yeah. Would you say Justin Rounds has made many mistakes when talking? Would you say Justin Rounds has contradicted himself much at all or not? In my opinion, I don't think he has really made many mistakes. I mean, he only talks so much, he doesn't say too much. It's not a bad thing, right? I mean, Candice Cooley seems like more suited for interviews than Justin, but, you know, Justin wants to talk, he'll talk, and there you go. He might not be as frequent. You can say with Justin, and when he talks and communicates, it's not about the quantity, but more the quality and how he delivers it. Candice Cooley, it's more quantity over quality due to the several contradictions and mistakes made, right? So that's the way I see it. And yeah, linking back to the whole looking to Candice Cooley for additional points, it shows a form of cooperation and even chemistry, okay? Finishing one's sentence, that type of stuff, okay? Now, what about facial expressions? Kind of ties back what I said earlier on. Stone-faced, straight-faced, like that. With having facial hair and that little beard, that can kind of conceal facial expressions, certain facial muscles and creases. I mean, sometimes people say certain creases in faces highlight a happy face, happy lines, they call them. But if you've got facial hair in certain areas, it kind of conceals it. You know what I'm saying? Some people who might have a very thick beard covers most of the mouth, so it's harder to read them. People that wear glasses, it's harder to read them because the eyes aren't showing. You can't see if they're making eye contact or not, or blinking, or if the pupils are dilated or not. So there's a little bit of concealment, but in terms of his overall face, it's pretty straight, don't you think? Out of the two interviews, there's a consistency, just like with the eye contact, the voice, the pace, and overall body language. So I'd say that's pretty normal, right? And as I was saying, when Candice Cooley was kind of getting upset, he kind of kept a straight face. I mean, you could kind of sense that he was probably thinking, oh man, what do I do? And then he tried cutting into talk in a way because he was trying to take the focus off her and more onto him, so he could try and talk or something just to let her recover. So you can say there's a covert level of care there. You might think it sounds a bit weird saying that, but I'm just making observations, okay? Let's move on to the next point. Blinking is normal, just like with his eye contact. I mean, sometimes people might blink more, not because they're nervous, but because they might have dry eyes. If it's cold, if they've got a condition, or a bit dehydrated maybe, that might cause dry eyes. There's some kind of irritation. If they're allergic, they'll blink like that to try and get more tears in the eye and stuff. But no, that's not with Justin. He appeared normal in that department once again and consistent. Anything else? Arms crossed like that, as you can see. In terms of his posture, it wasn't sat up straight, not quite. He was kind of leaning back with his legs crossed, arms crossed, which could say, although it's a semi-formal situation, he's comfortable enough to lay back in a way. And that ties in line with his tone of voice, his pace, his eye contact, and you know, that type of stuff. So you could say he's comfortable, right? He's not moving around too much, unlike Candice Cooley, who's a little bit like this, like that, okay? So yeah, I mean, it could be interpreted that with the arms being crossed like this, he's like holding something back. whether it's a positive thing or mainly a negative feeling or thought within. What, restraining himself, holding it together, there's something going on but he can't say it. Possibility. I mean, I don't know what his body language is like when he's angry, you know, if he had the odd outburst, I don't know. I don't know if there's any similarities from there. I'm only working with what I've got, okay? And I guess the final thing is, might have briefly touched on it before, but the whole pace, okay, I don't know if I mentioned that before, the pace of his voice is slow, right? There's moments where he pauses, or he's like, like that. Those moments of pauses could be he's a bit confused, or he doesn't know what quite, I'm doing it as well, he doesn't know what quite to say or how to word it. And that's a good thing, that he's not rushing in, he's not rambling on, he's not making mistakes or contradictions, he's thinking about what he's going to talk about and what he's going to say next. So that can lower the chances of errors, right? You probably hear me talk slow at times or have random pauses out of nowhere and think, has Warlike Ref disconnected? Error 404? You know, that type of stuff, but I'm just trying to think of what I'm going to say next or how I'm going to word it. So I can see that within Justin himself, which is good. And as I said earlier, like how he constructs certain sentences, he makes sure it's, you know, makes sense and it isn't interpreted in a bad way, I guess. The contrast though, which we will bring up once again, is when he had that outburst on Facebook. I believe he's deleted his posts both on his profile, okay, so you can't find it now. He's deleted it obviously because he's realised, oh, probably shouldn't have acted out like that, or heat of the moment situation, which is normal. But in terms of his wording there, that was in text over voice, so that could be, there is a difference there, isn't there? But still, you can kind of measure the tone of a person's attitude from the text, whether it be all in capital letters or the type of wording, whether it's abbreviated, not as formal compared to how they normally are, you know. It was kind of short, kind of straight to the point, and it was like, yeah, judgment's coming, you bring your whole family out, bring your gay son as well, Don Hately, I'm gonna see this down, you know, you're gonna be meeting God before I do, you know, that type of stuff. You don't hear him say that sort of stuff in interviews, do you? For obvious reasons, right? He's controlling himself. I guess the only other thing is, which we might as well bring up, is there a difference when Justin is by himself and not present around Candice Cooley? Is there some kind of psychological effect, a level of control, whether it be he controls himself when Candice Cooley is present, not to make a fool of himself because Candice Cooley will tell him off? Or is Candice Cooley directly got a hold of Justin in some way? So like if they're appearing on some interview together, Candice is like, before it starts, Justin, stick to the script, don't act out, don't get angry, stay calm, and let's do it. Is it like that? I don't know. It's only because when he had that outburst on Facebook, Justin, I don't think he was around Candice, or like when he was typing that message as a post, Candice Cooley wasn't there watching him do it. So does he act different when Candice is there and when she isn't? Is there some kind of thing in play there? Is Candice Cooley the individual to calm Justin down when he gets a little bit emotional or a bit like aggressive? I mean, it's all normal behaviour. I'm not discrediting that, but I'm just saying, is there a difference when Candice Cooley is present? Because all the interviews, from what I know of and what I've seen, whenever Justin appears in an interview, Candice Cooley is there as well. when Candice Cooley has done interviews by herself, Justin has not. So, is there anything to acknowledge there? Maybe, maybe not. You can leave your thoughts down below. Let's do one final poll before we get on to the next piece of important body language clip. Okay. Who do you think is better suited for an interview? Whether it be formal, informal, or semi-formal? Open-ended questions, closed questions, regardless. Who do you think is better suited for an interview when it comes to talking about the Dylan Rounds case? Candice Cooley, because she's done it several times before. She's come out with a lot of knowledge and information. The catch, though, fair few contradictions, switching and changing of information, not always being specific in wording. Or would you rather have Justin Rounds talking solo? Limitation, he's not done it before from the looks of it. He doesn't really talk as much. He's a bit slower in speech. He might not have every answer. Positive, thinks before he speaks. Controlled, like controlledness when talking. Which one? Choose in the poll. Just your own thoughts, okay? So, what we're going to do now, we're going to head on over to the Heavy D interview, the second one, with Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds. The setting is much different this time. You could argue it's more informal now because they're not in a studio. They're actually in Lucin, inside of the grain shed. Now, there's already been questions around that. We can get to that later on. But first, what I want to do is show you the odd few clips of Justin talking and how he appears in his body language. And then we can either compare or contrast after that with what we've previously seen, okay?
For any other reason?
No, and Dylan loved to call and tell you a good story.
Yeah.
Like
He
when
might
some-
want to tell you.
Yeah,
this story.
so if they're just like running into Chase in the desert, okay, so he leaves out the part of I gave him a ride because he knows I'm gonna say what the heck, son, why,
Right.
you know. So if there was any type of run-ins, anything excited, he would, I mean, he loved to call and tell you a good story, like,
Yeah.
hey, guess what, this just happened.
Yeah.
So anything anybody else he was running into was, he said, insignificant because there wasn't anything going on with him.
Yeah.
Well, we have evidence that everything happened right where we are.
Yeah.
We have that evidence, so all these other crazy, insane theories, you know, there's been stuff that we've been told not to release, and there's some of that that will clear up, but
Yeah.
all the evidence points to right where we are. We were told by one detective, he guaranteed that he'd be back tomorrow before noon, and with all this new pings on Dylan's phone and all kinds of stuff, and never did see him
Never came back.
again. No.
Do you know how far of a drive it is from this location to the sheriff's office? That's
About 2.5 hours.
okay.
It's
So,
always.
so it's a pain in the ass for people to get out
Exactly,
there.
and we've been told that, well, you gotta realize how far they have to drive.
Because they were getting a little out of control.
It was getting pretty dangerous out here
Yeah.
for me to be here.
Yeah.
And I had to go back after about a month and a half,
Yeah,
2
about 6
months.
weeks.
Does it take a toll on you mentally and emotionally?
It does.
Yeah.
The first time I'd go home on Sundays and I was not a safe driver coming in and out
Yeah.
of here on the roads. It
Right.
wasn't very good for me to be doing it, but
How would you describe your emotions, kind of the way you feel right now? Is it just numb? Is it empty? Is it
It's
hopeful? Is it, what is it?
more anger
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
yeah.
We're
More
still,
anger.
we're still
Yep.
kind of in the anger,
Yep.
It goes
more-
in waves,
Yeah.
anger,
Yeah.
sad, and then,
disbelief.
disbelief
Yep.
is a lot of it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so as you saw, that was the footage from Heavy D, which was, I guess, the most recent footage of Justin Rounds speaking and being involved in an interview. You can share your thoughts down below. First of all, do you think that there is a contrast between Heavy D's interview with Justin and Candice compared to the East Idaho News Channel footage from a couple of weeks ago, including a month on back because of different times it was scheduled. What do you think? I would say there is a change, definitely. Is it the environment? Is it the timing? Developments, factors going on behind the scenes? Maybe. Let's try and make sense of it all. First of all, let's just talk about the body language with Justin. Eye contact. There is a change compared to back then on the East Idaho News Channel. Now, in the Heavy D's footage, when looking at Justin, he doesn't give as much eye contact. He might be like that, giving a bit of eye contact, or he's like that. You know what I'm saying? So that's been reduced. I don't know if it's because of the environment. I don't know if it's because of who he's talking to. If it's because there's more cameras, you know, in your face, more enclosed, the weather, distractions going on. You know, you can leave your thoughts down below, but there's definitely a lack of eye contact compared to how it was beforehand. In terms of his actual body, his posture, look back to the previous footage, East Idaho News, he's kind of leaning back, legs crossed, arms crossed, looks kind of relaxed. This time he's like slouched over, bad posture. Now, that could be explained by the style of chair. They're in a lawn chair, which is very flimsy, fragile. The back seat, the backrest isn't as high up, so you can't really lean back properly because there's not enough material to support you. So that's probably why you might lean forwards like that on a lawn chair. There is still the arm supports, but he doesn't really make use of them. Okay. Compared to the East Idaho News Channel, that chair was a bit more firm. It wasn't a high top one, but it was more firm, so maybe that could explain the posture. Or the reason why there's a lack of posture now, and that's declined, is because of maybe something going on within him. A decline in hope, maybe. A decline in mood because of the way it's gone and how long it's gone on for, you know? That, I don't want to quite word it like this, but I don't know how else to say it. That slouched over is kind of like drained, not enough energy to stand up tall and speak out. That's been drained over time because it's dragged on. Possibility that, okay? As for his hands, I've said it before, clasped like this. That's what it was like. Sometimes it was like, you know, that type of mood. He's a bit more active, but then again, that could be his senses are heightened because of where he's at. You could be a bit more nervous because of the environment. You know, I just keep referring back to that because we'll get to it shortly because it is important, okay? But he seems a bit more movement involved, so he's not as relaxed this time. So there is something going on, I would say. As well, with his hands being clasped, okay? In the past, in the East Idaho News one, his arms were crossed. Get the stupid quote out of the way. His arms were crossed like this, but this time they're clasped. So he's like really holding it together. Now, what's the psychological reasoning behind that? Well, you clasp your hands together because you're kind of restraining yourself. You kind of holding back from a negative thought. So what would that negative thought be? Well, obviously the Dylan Rounds situation, because it's still ongoing. Because of where they're at, it's more relevant compared to being in a studio elsewhere in Idaho, I assume. So I think that does play a bigger role. I mean, it's real enough talking about the case and by it's literally happening right now, but to be in the environment as well, that must play a major role too. So he's definitely, I guess, trying to hold it together, and that might be to why he's slightly slouched forward, moving about a bit, irritated, heightened senses, a little bit nervous, you know, that type of stuff. You can leave your thoughts down below to whether you agree or not. But as for tone of voice, pretty much the same. I mean, there's a few moments where you might go a bit quiet when talking, like, could be almost like defeatist in a way, just like we've slouched over, not standing strong, bold and tall, but kind of on that verge of giving up. Not literally, because I'm sure they've got a lot of stamina within and they've got this far, but do you get what I'm saying in terms of an interpretation when someone is kind of like that, they're on the last legs. Whereas if someone was like this, yes, look at me, standing strong, there's a difference, right? Just wanted to mention that. You wonder what that was? Food. I know. It's almost as bad as the motel sheets on the beds with the marks on. Well, got to keep up with the tradition and standards, right? Of course. But yeah, linking back to the Dylan Rounds case and Justin. Tone of voice, for most part of it, sounds the same. I think it's more noticeable with Candice Cooley with the tone of voice changing at times rather than Justin. Justin kind of talks in a monotone voice, I would say. As for blinking, I would say it's relatively normal, although lack of eye contact, his blinking isn't erratic like that. It's just standard, right? What I would say is a key point, distracted. He seems more distracted, whether that be the environment. You see him looking about, looking around. You see him looking down at the ground. At one point, the dog is present, so I guess that's a distraction and maybe a comfort as well. So he's petting the dog, but when the dog moves away and stuff, he's still looking down at the ground. He's like kicking stuff about. That might just be that's probably a normal thing. Kicking a rock around, kicking a bit of dirt. But it's just because of the environment and looking down at the ground, and just behind them two, that hole is in the ground. So I don't know if there's some kind of connection going on. But he does seem more distracted, whether the bloody flies flying about, the temperature itself, the atmosphere, the eeriness of where they're at. I think it could be multiple factors all tied in. Whereas if you're in a studio where it's all nice, warm, or they've got aircon, comfortable chairs, refreshments and stuff like this, the host wording things differently, maybe all that takes role, right? And I think the final thing, which is also just as important, if not more, when Heavy D brought up the question, what about the mental toll? How's it impacted you psychologically? You know, good, bad? And the way they were wording it, both Candice Cooley and Justin said angry. And when Candice said angry, you saw Justin instantly nod his head like that. And we have kind of seen that within Justin, like with the outbursts on Facebook. It's not the best example. It's only one, but I don't have like other evidence to show the other stuff, okay? But I'm sure, you know, you can imagine him being angry for a certain reason. Maybe his voice is raised, a bit more of a serious face. You just have to imagine it yourself, right? But I don't know, it just makes sense for him to be angry, right? I know Candice Cooley is, she shows it more verbally. I can imagine Justin might show it more physically, but he's holding himself together, like with the whole, you know, clasping together, and also reminding himself of his family, his kids, just like how Ty Corbin highlighted the importance of that. We'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. He also said that because of the way it was getting dangerous out here. I don't know if that's more to do with him when he said when he was driving there and back, he wasn't focused, so he could have crashed his car and got hurt. That, you know, that can impact people that way. If you're distracted or there's a lot of thoughts going on in your head, you're not making the wrong judgment, or everyday tasks become almost an obstacle, or you end up endangering yourself because of the events going on. You could be referring to that, or you could be referring to that with the aggression, with trying to find answers, and with possible people walking free. It's like, I need to, you know, go to Lucin or go to Montella and have it out with people, and it could end bad. And we saw it with the Facebook post. So I think that's probably what Justin is referring to more so with that. Okay. Really anything else? I mean, I think what we've got to take in mind with that, all that body language from above, which we've highlighted, overall, I would say there's a decline, a negative decline in Justin Round's body language compared to, how long ago is it now? 3 weeks ago? I mean, it's not that bad, to be honest. If you're looking at the first East Idaho News Channel interview, that's about 4 months ago. If you compared a 4-month-old interview with a 2-week-old interview now, you'd probably say, well, of course there's going to be a noticeable difference in behaviour, attitude, appearance, mood, atmosphere, because if things are still ongoing, or there's been more corruptness since, there's been more confusion, or more bad stuff going on, or no success, it's going to take a toll on you. It's going to wear you down. You can still resist, but it can still wear you down. So whereas back then you might have been more energetic, more positive, more hopeful, you kind of on a lower battery, right? Candice Cooley, she's remained like that. With Justin, it's like, You know what I'm saying? And I think in that interview by Heavy D, it was low down there, right? It seemed a bit flat. You know, if you think different, you can obviously list it down below. But as I said, maybe the whole reason to why there's a decline, a change in behaviour is mainly because of the way the case has gone and the fact that it's still ongoing, right? Just wearing people down. So with that in mind, let's just talk about the atmosphere and environment itself. Okay, let's refer back to that. So from what we've heard in recent time, including this interview and later ones from Mob Crew and No Thanks, and maybe additional stuff we might hear with the upcoming one coming later tonight, early morning UK time on Doug's, okay, is that there seems to be activity in the grain shed, likely where Dylan was and when he was hurt, right? And with what other people have said, channels like the Shack Lady, not exactly being clear, but saying that there's substantial evidence found in the hole. I don't know if there's a hierarchy of information of who knows what and then not sharing it with the general mass public for certain reasons. I'm not too sure, but there seems to be a consensus all around that there's something going on in the shed, right? And when you look at the sheds here, whether it be by Salty Pancakes, which was like 2-3 months ago, or most likely Justin Round's photo, which must have been taken very recent, right? As said, the chair that's out there and some of the stuff moved about could explain why some of the chairs here were left out. I know these chairs are different, but the one Heavy D was sat on could have been this one here. And that table was there because the tripod was on it facing Heavy D, and then there was another tripod by the side facing the parents, as you see that. So that's just to tighten the line of relevancy of when they appeared, almost like a timestamp, you could say. Also, bear in mind what one person said, and this was even before this whole video existed on my channel, was maybe a week or two ago when I did a video on Justin Rounds and I used a certain photo, which I think was this. I paused it at this moment in the video, and when someone saw my thumbnail, they said, God, Justin Rounds looks really defeated, looks really negative. Just this still shot. You know, photos can display a range of emotions, even paintings as well, if it's during an event or a moment, right? So with that in mind, it shows that there's at least other people that can pick up on it without even looking too deep into it. But more to do with the environment, you know. It's bad enough being involved in a case like this, whether it be a family member or a friend, and you know that person, and then you've got to talk about them and you've got to try and search for them. It can be draining and tiring, and then also, as I said, frustrating, angry, and sad at times, up and down, up and down. So to be talking about it can open up wounds because it's ongoing and not solved. That creates further strain on the body and the mind. But I think in addition, when you're actually there in the moment, actually at the place of where it all happened, I guess there's a greater effect on you. So if you're walking about, you might feel a bit uneasy, might feel a bit creeped out because it's silent, it's quiet, but you know this is the last known spot where Dylan was at, and it's like, oh, the uncertainty of what happened next, right? But then even possibly knowing what happened next, that can also lead to discomfort, right? And if it's the likes of in the grain shed, Dylan walked in, he could have been ambushed from behind, knocked out, hit in the back of the head. Dylan fell onto the ground, might have hurt his nose, led to a bit of blood on the boot, led to some kind of evidence or residue being found on the ground, hence why there's that hole there, as you can see, and then a clearer image is the one back there. You see the mound, and that mound of dirt has been collected from just in front of it, where there's a hole exposed. I don't have the image with me on the spot, but the actual hole itself, what you see in Salty Pancake's video, it isn't that big at all. Not big enough to hide a body, okay? But big enough to maybe hide, what do you call it? Well, I don't know if you'd even call it hide. I mean, maybe Dylan's cap, maybe a top, possibly. I don't think you could really fit much in that hole. But if there was like blood, some kind of liquid that leaked, seeped into the ground, was absorbed. You know what I'm saying? When you get certain texture, like, what's another comparison? If there's blood, and I'd know because like when someone jumped off a bridge, there was sand put down on the ground to absorb the blood and all the other bits and pieces, right? If you're at a gas station, a petrol station, and there is fuel, gas, diesel, petrol, whatever it is, a spillage of it, people put sand over it, right, to absorb it all. So in a way, because this is dirt and it's kind of dry, it'll probably absorb any wetness, right, and it seep through lower into the ground. So if Dylan was hurt, fell flat onto the floor, face hitting the ground in that area, and then he was bleeding from the nose, the mouth, the ears, or the eyes, however extreme it could be, it might have collected as a pool of blood, maybe. That's all I'm saying. And with time, it seeped into the ground and was absorbed and became a stain, almost. And then maybe they dug that hole, FBI, LE, Box Elder County, Search and Rescue, whoever it is, dug it to get maybe a soil sample and take it in for DNA, take it to the labs. Maybe, that's what I'm thinking. And if the parents were notified at a later point, and then the next thing they had to do, maybe not straight away, but at a point, had to go into the shed and then do the interview. Maybe it made them feel a bit uneasy, right? You see Justin moving about. He doesn't look as relaxed as he did in the studio. So there could be some kind of psychological effect playing on. Because if they know that this is where Dylan was at and something bad happened, it's going to make you feel a bit uncomfortable, isn't it? Just like if you was in an abandoned house and you were in a specific room where maybe a satanic exorcism took place or some kind of ritual, and it feels all dark and it's a weird atmosphere, and you're looking over, you're looking behind you and everything, and it's not a nice feeling. So that can definitely play a role, the actual environment you're in when you're actually doing an interview. Just like if you're doing some kind of experiment, whether it's an overt non-participant observation or maybe an overt participation or covert non-participant precipitation, fucking mate, or a covert non-participant fucking I can't even say the word, it's a tongue twisted out, but you get what I'm saying. When you're doing some kind of study, some kind of case, some kind of experiment which might involve an individual or group, and the environment you're in, it could impact negatively the variables, the actual end result. So there's that. I think the only thing what we've got to bring up, one last thing, is whose choice was it? I know Salty Pancakes brought up saying, Why would anyone want to do an interview inside of the grain shed where bad things could have happened? Who would have allowed it? And in addition, if things have been moved around, if this is supposedly a crime scene, then why was it not treated as one? Well, it was mainly the police that didn't treat it as a crime scene, nor did they tape it off. And I guess with time, the family thought, oh, well, I guess we can do what we like now. That's the way I see it. And as well, kind of like with the whole vehicle situation, we tie back to Dylan's Ford F-150 burgundy pickup truck. It was the police that said, yeah, if you want to drive it, you can. You do what you need to do. There's the thumbs up. And then the family just followed orders and thought, right, well, if they say we can, then we will. Just like how, well, if the police ain't treating this as a proper crime scene, then I guess we don't have to either. Now, that's kind of incorrect and the wrong thing to do by the family. They should, even if the authority write it off and say, no, this ain't anything special, nothing to see here, the family should resist and go against what the police say and treat it like a crime scene and not touch stuff and maybe not move things like the vehicle, even if they were advised to or there was some kind of acknowledgement, because if they know that the police are a bit dodgy and they've already made mistakes, then you shouldn't really trust the word that comes out of their mouth next, even when they say do this, do that. Like if someone told you to run across the highway or a railway track when a train's coming, are you going to do that? Probably not. But what if there is a researcher, if there is someone of higher authority who appears to know more or have a higher intelligence, humans are more likely to comply with what's said. Some kind of internalization takes place. Other times it might be compliance. You're going along with it, but you're not changing your mind inside. You're just going along with it because you either have to, you want to lay low, you don't want any drama or confrontation, any problems, that type of stuff. But internalization is where you fully agree with what's been said or what's been told or what you've been told to do, and then you follow that through. And that's partially because a person of higher authority told you so, and you think that because they're of higher authority, then they must know more and they must be more believable and are often right. That's how it seems to be. There's a lot of psychological effects going on within the Dylan Rounds case. Environment, figures, people, timing, events, the order of it, hierarchies, the lot, right? So all I'd say in my opinion is let's first of all raise the question whether anyone knows it. Well, you can list your thoughts down below, or we'll just bring it up as a big important question. Okay, are you ready? So, when this interview was conducted with Heavy D and his crew, alongside with Justin Rounds and Candice Cooley, who came up with the idea to film inside of the grain shed and to sit inside? Whose idea was it? Does anyone know? If you do, list it down below, because that could explain a lot. Maybe it was Candice Cooley, or maybe it was Heavy D, because they were thinking, well, it's windy outside, noise disturbance, we'll go inside so it's not as dusty, it's not blowing in our eyes, it's a bit more compact in here, we can hear each other better and more clearly, it looks better for the video, it looks more relevant, it looks more hot, better topic, more intense, more eye-catching. You know, is it because of that? I don't know. There could be different reasons, numerous ones, or maybe just a sole one. But it'd be interesting to know who's responsible for it, because if this is a crime scene, or it should be treated as one in the mind of the family, or it gives off bad negative feelings, then why put yourself through it? I'm not quite sure. I mean, I'm surprised that whilst they were in there, that they didn't say, oh yeah, in the words of Candice Cooley, yeah, and over the shoulder of me, back there near that bookshelf, you've got that hole, because just behind her, that's where the hole is. I'm surprised she didn't say anything about it. I might be wrong, but it feels like that's the one thing that has not been talked about really at all. from at least my point of view and what I've seen, okay? It's only Salty Pancakes that showed the hole and actually took direct photos of it up close. Justin Rounds, yeah, he took the photo on the left, but only on the outside. He didn't go inside. He was inside of the vehicle. He didn't walk up to the hole. He didn't put any arrows or markers pointing to it. He didn't mention anything in the caption relevant to the hole. It's just like, there's a grain shed, I'm out. So, even though they're actually in there, the camera angle, the way it's positioned, it's at an angle facing the left corner of the grain shed. It's not pointing down there. There's no kind of indication to say there was a hole there. You know, if you never watched Salty Pancakes' video or my coverage of it, assisting in analysing, if you didn't hear what the Shack Lady said in some live streams, you would have no clue that a hole is back there just behind Candice Cooley, where Dylan may have been laying on the ground unconscious or dead. You would never know, would you? Because it's not been talked about by the family. So it makes you believe it must be an important thing, right? If it wasn't important, then I'm sure it would have been talked about. Now, has anyone asked the question to Candice Cooley in any interviews? Because from all the interviews I've seen, no one has actually asked the question, what is that hole inside the grain shed? If I have missed a point or missed a video where it did talk about it, feel free to correct down below. I'm just telling you from my memory, recollection, that's all, okay? An observation. So, a few different things to take into mind, right? There you go. So I think that concludes the body language analysis of Justin Rounds this time. I have covered Candice Cooley in the past in one of my previous videos. Make sure to check that out. And as said, once again, be on the lookout for, you know, updates, the interviews with Candice Cooley on No Thanks, which is coming soon. And then following after that, a later date, Jim Terry interviewing Chase Venstra. See how that goes. Could be the first time ever. See what he's got to say. And, you know, all that. What will happen next? Who knows? Prediction-wise, I think I might have mentioned it earlier, but what I'll say is with the Candice Cooley one, I have a feeling it'll probably be at least an hour and 40-minute long video. 1 hour, 40 minutes long, whether it's with Candice Cooley all the way through or not. I think the end message will be hopeful, but the overall discussion might not be of much big leads, right? I do feel they probably will talk about the drone photos, and if not that, they might even just say, we're still analysing them and not go too much into it. So that's how I feel with that. As for Chase Venstra, I really don't know what to expect. I've not really looked at Jim Terry's videos when it comes to interviewing key people in the case, like in terms of how he asks questions. Does he cut in? Does he allow people to speak? Is it open-ended questions or closed questions? I'm not too sure, but I'll obviously find out if it does become available. I guess the only thing to take in mind, and I'm not sure the actual layout, format or timescale, but I believe that the Chase Venstra interview video on Jim Terry's TV's channel is a members only live stream. But I think it does get released publicly at a later date, possibly. I mean, I can understand the method. It's to entice people to join, to pay, to get more involved. If it doesn't get publicly released, I kind of understand it. I know to some people will get frustrated, just like how they might have done with Salty Pancakes when he made member-only live streams and restricting all of his videos at certain points, or doing the live panels with Brookie and some other people, and they're not publicly available still now. I think that might be more to do with avoiding resistance and the backlash because of how things have gone with time, but I don't think it's practical, because when you start alienating or isolating the general overall community, it might make it less believable. You've got these like secret little groups going on, sharing of little bits of information here, little bits of information there. It's like, it might make people doubt these channels or the claims made, right? People saying, oh yeah, but Brookie showed it on here, Brookie showed it on there, Brookie's got a screenshot of this and that. And it's like, yeah, but some of the stuff mentioned we can't see or hear of because it's locked behind a paywall. So it's only claims and rumours in the eyes of the people who don't have access to those videos. So that's what I mean, it can have a negative effect on how people see it. Whereas if it's public, nothing to hide, nothing to be discreet about, open and honest, more believable, credibility remains. So there's ways. People do it financially as a motive, but the backlash is it leads to distaste in some people's mouths and maybe doubt within others. So yeah, I think that's all I can really say at the moment. We'll see how things play out, see what happens next, and yeah, thanks for watching, appreciate it, and for now, good night and goodbye.